Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Symposium Weekly Speaker Series. I am your host, Alex Matsuo. I'm back after taking last week off. The day job was calling. I am so excited to be with you all tonight as we count down to the Paranormal Research Symposium happening August 23rd, 2025 in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Now, before we begin, I did mention I was out last week. I want to give a heartfelt thank you to Whitney for holding down the fort while I was out. She's amazing, and I'm so grateful to have her as part of the team. And I'm so glad that last week's guests were able to have her for a host. Now, let's talk about tonight's guests because we've got one of the most thoughtful and respectful researchers in the field of parapsychology and anomalous phenomena. It's got some big words tonight. It's going to be interesting. So first up, we have Dave Schumacher, a science-forward investigator whose work focuses on environmental data collection, psychophysical variables, and potential survival of consciousness. His research has been featured in the Journal of Scientific Exploration, and he co-hosts the excellent podcast, one of my favorites, Three Tortured Souls. Also joining us as well is Brandon Massullo, a licensed clinical therapist and parapsychologist. He holds advanced degrees in both clinical counseling and psychological research methods with a concentration in parapsychology. His research explores the psychological and environmental triggers behind spontaneous ghostly encounters, and his book, The Ghost Stories, again, one of my favorites, is a must-read for anyone who is serious about bridging science and spirit. The Paranormal Research Symposium is proudly presented by Ghostly Images of Gettysburg, Ghosted Magazine, Gold Dust Publishing. I actually have a whole fancy overlay that I made for this, as well as Lauren Hans. Here we go. Hey, there's that image I made. There we go. So thank you so much to our sponsors for your gift in helping us make the symposium happen. Also, tickets are still available. So if you go to associationofparanormalstudy.com, you can get more information about tickets. Tickets are on sale for $50. The early bird did end a few weeks ago. Sorry, friends. But you can still get your tickets until August 22nd. And also, we have a room block available at the Quality Inn in Gettysburg. The room block in our host hotel has sold out and it's no longer available, but you can still take advantage of the rates at the Quality Inn in Gettysburg. Book it before it fills up. Also, finally, if you looked at that ticket price and you thought, no, thank you, we are still looking for awesome volunteers to help behind the scenes of the symposium. So if you want to be a part of that team, head on over to our website, associationofparanormalstudy.com. We do need help. It's a big event. So you get free admission to the symposium and you get an invitation to our Friday night dinner and social, and you can meet the presenters and the APS team. All right. I think now I just need to hide this overlay. There we go. All right. So without further ado, let's welcome Dave and Brandon to the show. As soon as I click the right buttons, here we go. I got one and I got two. Hey, guys.
Hi. Hey. Thanks for having us.
Hey. Yeah, thanks for being here, and thank you so much for being part of the symposium. Really excited to see both of your presentations. So, huzzah! All right. Yeah. How are you both? How is everything going with you this evening?
Going good. Keeping busy. Enjoying the summer. Looking forward to the symposium.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I would echo that. And what does huzzah mean? What is that?
I see it as like a version of hooray.
Oh, okay.
Hooray, huzzah. Yeah. It's a
that
spicier hooray.
Okay. I didn't know if it was a Harry Potter thing or not. I hear people say huzzah all the time. I've never. Isn't it? No? I've never seen Harry Potter. No. I know people are going to hate me for that, but I've never seen it.
What is wrong with you? Wow.
I never read the books. I never seen it. So. But that's cool. I like the huzzah.
It's more creative and more interesting to me than just saying hooray. So I don't know. It's interesting. So I like it.
It's your thing.
Exactly. Do your thing. To people who are watching this evening, this is an interactive show. So if you'd like to ask questions in the chat, feel free to do so. Like Rochelle, if you just, typed into the chat, I will feature you on screen. Feel free to ask our guests any questions you have, leave any comments, and also let us know where you are tuning in from. We've had people tuning in all the way from Ireland. So, it'd be interesting to see how far the show continues to reach. So, yeah, very, very good. Very good times. And hello, Rochelle. Thank you for tuning in this evening. So, all right. Got some questions to ask y'all tonight. This is the chance to pick your brains before, the big day. Can each of you share what your symposium presentation will be about?
Go ahead, Brandon.
Oh, okay, sure. Well, I've kind of strayed a little bit from my comfort zone on this one, and I'm a little nervous about it. It's probably the most nervous I've been about a presentation in a long time. But what I'm actually going to do is talk about how religious beliefs can significantly shape how people perceive life, death, and the afterlife. I think religious interpretations sometimes get lost in all the tech and all the theories and all the shows. But what I really did was there's a book called A Theory of Pneumatology, and it's by an author, Young Stilling, and it was written, I think, in the late 1800s, 1851, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, he was pretty well known back in the time. I think he was a professor of economics, uh, public finances, agriculture, veterinary medicine, and political science. But he was also a pretty well known occultist and also a cataract surgeon, if I believe. So he did all kinds of stuff. And he wrote a book basically about ghosts. And what he did in the book was he talked about his theory about why ghosts are around. And what's interesting about his theory is it goes against pretty much everything that 19th century spiritualism basically says. Everything that's kind of pop culture beliefs nowadays, that when we see a ghost, we have to communicate with it, find out its unfinished business, sort of be their ghost psychologist, find out what's going on with them, and then help them move on. So what his theory is basically the opposite of that, and it's based on his core Christian beliefs that by doing that, we're actually harming the ghost. We're not helping them. And from his perspective, which was a pretty interesting one, was that the ghosts, so there's heaven, there's hell, which we know what those are, but then there's Hades, and that's where ghosts kind of hang around. It's sort of, they weren't bad enough to go to hell, but they weren't good enough to go to heaven. And what's keeping them from moving to heaven is their attachments to things on earth. So they have to work through those in Hades. And basically, when you're in Hades, you have the ability to sort of haunt. So they show up to humans to get spiritual guidance. And if humans kind of feed into their attachments, then they can't ever move forward. Sort of, if I'm addicted to Reese cups and I absolutely need them all the time, right? I just need one more. It's going to make me feel better. It's going to make me feel better. And then when I die, I come back and I haunt you, Alex, and I say, I just need Reese cups. You're enabling me and feeding my addiction, and you're not letting me process what's going on so I could move on from my earthly attachment.
Nice.
And I thought it was a fascinating look at it, because you have all this spiritualism, all the pop culture saying you got to work with the ghosts, and you have Young Stilling basically saying, no, you're doing the worst thing you can for him.
You're doing it all wrong.
Yeah, and he has a manual in there. Basically, the books. I think it's 1851, but he has a manual of what you're supposed to do with the ghosts, and I thought it was kind of a cool read. And I think it'll be interesting for a lot of people at the symposium, just because it's a different view.
Mm-hmm. I love that. All right, I'm going to let John Michael do the intro for Dave. Dave! And just wanted to say, woo!
John! What's up, John? Thanks for stopping by.
All right.
Yeah, so my talk will be, there's an app for that. It's monitoring and collecting environmental data at haunted and non-haunted locations. And I'm going to specifically focus on apps and things that you can attach to your smartphone and collect data with. We're not going to be talking about the ghost radar or those ghost hunting apps. It's apps that are designed for other things, because the current smartphones have really good sensors in them, magnetic field sensors, spatial orientation, sound levels, acceleration. You can even do barometric pressure now, since it'll use the microphone to detect changes in barometric pressure, vibration, infrasound. There's a whole lot of things you can do with your smartphone, and the best part is you can data log them and download it, so you can do further analysis. So I'm going to go through some of those apps that are available out there, and then I'm going to show some examples from both haunted and non-haunted locations. And then more importantly is, yeah, it's great to collect that data. It's good to data log it. It's good to graph it out. But how do you analyze it? How do you look at it statistically to see if it's meaningful or not? Because you might have a couple different spikes in, let's say, the magnetic field, but okay, there might be a couple different spikes there at any certain time or any certain location. And how do you correlate with that with other things? And how do you make sure it's just not a coincidence or due to chance? How do you statistically analyze it to determine what you have there might be meaningful?
Nice. I love that approach, because I'm not a big fan of the ghost hunting apps, but apps are a big thing in our culture now. It's like we can use them we can use so many different types of apps for different things. And I mean, I work in tech, so AI is also a thing in my field now, and how AI can be used, not for ghost hunting. Well, not for ghost hunting, but yeah, I like how yours is your topic is proactive of like, hey, here are the tools out there that you can leverage. So yeah, I'm excited to see that presentation as well. So
and it's cost effective too. I feel like if you're buying all these different pieces of equipment to do different things, from infrasound to EMFs to ions, it's going up and up and up. Where you have this phone that you already have that has a lot of capabilities that a lot of people don't know about. I didn't know about the barometric pressure part of it.
Yeah.
Same. That's new for me too.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting what they can do just by interpreting information coming back from the microphone. They use that both for barometric pressure and infrasound. Changes and vibrations, I guess, in the speaker or the microphone. They can measure that, and then they can tell what type of pressure changes correlate with that.
Wow.
So it's pretty incredible. I mean, it is limited. You can't do magnetic or electromagnetic fields. There's no sensor in your phone for electromagnetic fields. So I'll also talk a little bit about what some of the limitations are as well. You know, things like thermal imaging. You can do it with your phone, and there's an app, but you got to buy the little camera that plugs into it. So I'll also talk about things it can't do. Which is good to know, because you really should know what your equipment can and can't do when you're using it.
But I think it's a good start, right? So
it is.
We'll be able to detect changes or differences.
And the best part of it is you can pretty much go anywhere with it. We were just, a couple months ago out in California, went to Alcatraz. Of course, they're really not going to want you to carry in a case full of equipment if you're just going on a tour, but you can bring your phone, set it down for 5-10 minutes and collect a bunch of data. So there's a sneaky way to do things too.
Yes. I mean, yeah, and you're right. Like I listen to the recordings on my phone sometimes, and I'm like, this is way better than even like using this thing. So the technology is wild.
And I think it's good to have. So if you have all that fancy equipment, you also have a secondary thing that's kind of there for you as well. So you can sort of correlate to see if there's any big changes, or if it's measuring things accurately too.
Yeah, exactly. Nice. What are you both most looking forward to about the symposium?
Go ahead, Dave.
Besides Brandon's talk? No, I'm just I'm looking forward to all the different talks, interesting topics. Now I just like to show up and meet people and chat and make connections and see if there's other people that are interested in things that I'm interested in. And yeah, it's a great way to meet people, to potentially collaborate, share ideas, and just learn.
Yeah. Dave, I'm already going to say you should talk to Lauren Hellickson. She is a tech builder, and her motto is, if you don't know how it works, how do you know it works?
Cool.
So yeah, she's got some good stuff going.
Yeah, I think I saw that episode. There's some she was talking about a residence chamber at one of the locations here in Ohio. I've been to that location a handful of times. What's it freaking called?
I know which one you're talking about, and it just escaped me as well. It's one of Adam Kimmel's locations, I think.
Yeah, it's like a reformatory or a school or something. Anyway, I think it's a good idea to do things like that, because you have these spaces and you have this ability to sort of, I don't know if it's really an experiment, or I'm not sure what she's doing, but she's collecting data on something. And I think that's a cool thing. I wish, more people would do that with these haunted locations, because you have access to it 24/7 to run different experiments, right? Not just the same old stuff over and over again.
Right.
And then the important thing is what you do with the data too, right? You have to log it, you have to continuously look at it, you have to, like Dave said, run some statistics on it and replicate and see if there are any changes to it. So I'd look forward to that talk. I think there was a couple more people that I watched that had some sort of some different ways of collecting data on apparitions and haunted locations. I think those I'm kind of interested in as well. But I haven't really seen everyone yet. I know John and Mary Sable. I'm big fans of them, so I'll definitely be catching that talk. He's always very animated and informative at the same time. So that's a great speaker.
Even if you don't understand a word he's saying, you're still enthralled and entertained.
So big words involved there.
Yeah, so he's worth the price of admission.
Nice. Awesome. Let's see. So one more question for the both of you, and then we'll branch off into your individual areas of expertise. How did each of you get started in the world of parapsychology and anomalous research? I want to hear your origin stories, so to speak.
I'll handle this one first. Gosh, my origin stories are kind of boring. When I was in high school, I picked up a book at the library on parapsychology, and I just read it. I suppose the real origin was Ghostbusters. When I learned what parapsychology was, that's probably the real origin. But then I started reading about it when I got older, and I got fascinated with it, and I actually went to get a degree in psychology. And once I got the undergraduate done, I got a master's in clinical counseling, and then I really picked up parapsychology again. And that's when I decided, I'm going to give this a shot. So then I went to University of Edinburgh and studied parapsychology there. And that's when I really got into the research part of it. My paper was on environmental sensitivity and paranormal experiences. So I was looking at why some people have more experiences as opposed to others, like what makes them different. And environmental sensitivity is one of the key factors over the last, it's been 20 years, but it came out in 2007 with Michael Jower, and it's really, it's picking up momentum over the last 20 years. Because we really find that there is a core group of people that we're finding there's similarities between people who have numerous ghostly encounters. And then I got back to the States, and then I started just kind of helping people with research articles, and got my name on a few, and then I just been doing that for the last 5 years or so. So it starts with a book. I never had an experience when I was a kid, nothing like that. I picked up that book at the library, and I just kind of been hanging on to it. And, back then ghosts weren't very popular. So I would hide the book so no one saw what I was looking at. I hid it under my bed. I did all kinds of that stuff. I still sometimes feel uneasy talking about ghosts in front of people. I don't know. Does anyone else feel that way? Like they're judging you when you talk about, like, you read about ghosts or write about them? No?
Sometimes. One of my colleagues kind of outed me to an audience at my work last week and was like, "Oh, Alex, has written books about ghosts and, does witchy things." And it's in front of like all these corporate sellers for a major company. Right. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. So I'm like, I'm like taking my glass of wine and hiding behind the bar.
The people love to do that, because I work in a hospital. So it's like, I was up there doing some sort of presentation, and somebody said, "Hey, Brandon's into ghosts, and here's all of his books." And then now every time I do something, I'm the ghost guy. You know,
we went on a work business / team building thing, and they scheduled a ghost tour. And as I walked downstairs, like, we scheduled this for you because we know you're into this stuff. I'm like, here we go. So hold on. What do you think about that? What do you think about that?
Exactly.
I'm like, okay.
So do ghosts really exist? So what do you think?
What do you think?
Yeah.
I tried to ride the fence because I don't know what these people are. Are they hardcore skeptics or are they believers? I'm like, I don't know. There's some evidence. Depends on what you look at. People do have it, and they're like, I believe in this stuff. I know it's real. It's like, okay, wow, I found out more about you than you found out about me.
Right.
So
one of my colleagues came up to me after that speech and was like, okay, so what's the most haunted room in this building? And I'm like, okay,
I'm into it. I'm not psychic.
Exactly.
So there's always that sort of vulnerability to it when you put yourself out there. Especially because our worlds are so segregated to some degree. Like, I have my home life, and then I have my work life, and it's almost like I'm a different person.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have my ghost life, right? Where it's like, I talk to people like Dave, and my wife is not really into the ghosts and things like that, and neither is my family, really. So I don't have that constant outlet. I see a lot of people who come to conferences with their parents, their moms, their sisters, their brothers. It's like a family thing. There's that socio-cultural connection that they had ever since they were little, and I never had that. So I really just segregated my life, and it's compartmentalized, if you want to think about it like that. And so when I move one of those compartments into another, it's a sense of anxiety and uncertainty, and you just don't know, especially when you start publishing stuff, because then people Google you and they know all the stuff you're writing, and it's a sense of vulnerability to it. Like going to conferences like these, I wouldn't do that. When I got out of school, I probably would say no to most conferences.
Nice. All right, Dave, your origin story.
Sure. So, like Brandon, no ghostly experience, no nothing. Just loved anything and everything scary, spooky, haunted. So, TV shows, of course, Scooby-Doo, Ghostbusters, The Entity, Poltergeist. You just watch these and you're like, wow, it's crazy. And then, similar to Brandon, a book I came across in high school, ESP Hauntings and Poltergeist, Parapsychologist's Handbook by Lloyd Auerbach. And I picked that up. I'm like, oh, this looks kind of cool. So I read it and I'm like, oh, this is like serious. There's a real field of study here. I'm like, wow, okay, pretty cool. So just started reading more and more books. Then my interest became a little more academic, even when I started undergraduate. Discovered, fortunately, that the school I went to, the university, the library, had issues of the Journal of Parapsychology,
oh wow,
ASPR. So yeah, Journal of Psychical Research, which was interesting. And I don't know how many actually have them, but that university had quite a few. So I'd kind of flip through them, read a couple things. Then got into graduate school, and I think my approach to it, I was always interested. You go out and do the legend tripping or go look at the haunted place and just have fun. But then, as you train further and further into the scientific method and how to collect data and analyze it, I think I took that interest from my background and training in biology and molecular biology and wanted to apply it to the paranormal or parapsychological topics. As I started getting into the workforce, I found a group in Janesville, Southern Wisconsin Paranormal Research Group, which was not quite my wife at the time, but would soon be in the future. She was running that group, and that's how we met. And then we were together and ended up getting married. And, we continue both in the field, and her not as much right now, but I do a little bit more. But I took a couple classes here and there. I took the online class from the same school Brandon went to in Edinburgh. They had an online parapsychology class. There's a variety of different courses you can take. The massive online classes, those were going on for quite a while. I think they're still going on, or they're going to start up again. Took some of Lloyd's classes when I believe he was still at HCH Institute. So just furthering my knowledge, information, and then ended up meeting people like Brandon, and we've worked on a few projects together, and wrote a couple papers that got published in academic journals, and still continuing the journey today.
Nice. Living the dream.
Yeah.
Is this the dream?
Yeah. Yeah. We did have one question in the chat that I thought was interesting. And I know, like, framing this for both of you from very scientific backgrounds, I'd be interested in hearing like your theories and thoughts on that. Do you think spirits only interact with people who are more susceptible to their presence, or can anyone see and or feel spirits?
I would probably say anyone can. I think there are just some people who are better at having these ghostly encounters, and it has a lot to do with sort of their sensitivity to the environment around them. More than it does about psychic sensitivity. So some people are just better at seeing more in-depth colors, or they're just better at I could walk into a room, I could sit down on a chair that's been just wiped by bleach, and I could sit next to a guy who's drenched in Old Spice underneath the fluorescent light, and I'm perfectly fine. But someone who is very sensitive to the environment would get a rash from the seat, they would get a headache from the light, and then they would get nauseous from the cologne. So two people are experiencing the world a lot differently. One is just more in tune to the environment around them. And what we find is these people with this hypersensitivity and a thing called transliminality have way more ghostly experiences. And it's just a collection of hypersensitivity to the environment, sort of like brain stuff, psychological correlates, and then just personality too. Some people just experience the world a little bit differently, more emotionally and more tuned to things. But I think anyone can have ghostly encounters, and I think that that's plausible. But some people are just probably more apt to.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good point. Yeah. And I don't have anything more to add to what Brandon said there as it relates to like subjective experiences. I think there's a little bit of a difference with subjective experiences. I think what Brandon was saying, maybe a lot more of that plays a part in those subjective experiences. But when there's objective experiences where objects are moving, or there's footsteps that can be recorded, or other lights flickering on and off, or the door opening and closing, or sometimes you hear a voice and everybody hears it and it could be recorded. So I think there's a bit of a difference between objective and subjective, but there might still be something with people that are more prone to experiences that'll even have more objective experiences happening around them at certain locations. So yeah, I think, like Brandon said, some people seem to be a little bit more susceptible or able to pick up on those things for whatever reason, and all the different elements that he spoke to. But yeah, I definitely think some people just seem to have more experiences. I mean, you look at people, I know there's people make fun of skeptics sometimes because they're like, okay, you are the total ghost killer. You come into a location and nothing ever happens. So, is it that they're killing the mood, or are they just not susceptible to it, or what's going on? A lot of times you'll see people might be skeptical, have an experience, but explain it away when maybe that wasn't the natural explanation. They just kind of explain it away. So there's a variety of different factors involved here. That's what I think makes it so interesting. I think the most interesting part is people do have experiences. What those are, why they have them. That's kind of the part that is really fascinating when you start digging into it.
Yeah. And I would say, like, there seems to be sort of these haunting catalysts, things about a person that sort of make it more likely to have a ghostly encounter. So environmental sensitivity, paranormal belief, sociocultural influences. So if I'm raised in a house where there's a lot of talk about experiences,
past experiences.
Yeah, there's these catalysts that sort of would push a person probably to be more likely to have an experience. So if you have all these, you're going to have more experiences than a person who may only have one or two of these sort of ingredients or catalysts, if you want to think about it like that. So I do, I think subjective and objective is a good delineation too. So something that I see move or is captured moving anomalously is different than a feeling that I get, or even, a sense of a presence, or claiming to see an apparition is subjective. And objective, it's hard to say, hey, that didn't happen, when it's actually happening. Of course, you could come up with reasons for why something objectively happened, I suppose.
Nice. Got a little love from Brad Bradley, dynamic
Brad.
duo. That's what I'm going to call y'all next time.
Please don't.
Yeah. I'm not wearing the Robin outfit again.
Yeah, please don't.
Nice. All right. So, Dave, this question's for you. So, your work involves data logging at haunted locations. Can you walk us through your process and what you're looking for when you're doing this? And are you interacting? We're trying to interact with spirits, or are you just like doing the crock pot set and forget type of thing with your data collection?
Both. It depends. It depends on what people report, where they report it. Does it seem to respond to things? Because if they're saying it does, then we will try to interact and see if we get a response. And we've done that in locations before. We've done locations where we just put the equipment in and let it log, because people say, okay, something happens at a certain time. It's pretty repeatable. So we'll put equipment in that location and let it data log. We'll also put it in, we'll have another system, a duplicate system that we like to run in a location within the site where nothing has happened as well, kind of like an in-location control. So we'll let those two systems run and data collect. So yeah, the basic is basically to go into a location, have people kind of take you through, tell you where things have happened, what's happened. We used to do baseline readings by walking around, and we don't do that anymore. We just put the equipment in those two areas or a couple areas and let it run. We'll use it as a baseline in the control location. And actually, there's statistical analysis ways that when you're collecting data, you can actually use that as its own baseline. And it looks at, then the data you're looking for is how many, standard deviations, or how different it is from the normal background that it's been running the whole time. So we're really trying to focus in on certain locations, and also within those locations, if people know that, let's say that I'm sitting in this room and I'm at this desk, but somebody said by the door behind me, that's where they saw an apparition. One of the things we try to do is data log and record in the location where I would be sitting in, where they said they saw it when they were sitting there, and then also the location where the phenomena was supposedly at. So you're trying to see, is it something that's affecting the person, or is it something in the environment that might be affected as well? So yeah, it's specific to each location, but those are kind of some of the general ways that we go about doing it. We'd like to make repeated visits, not just one for 2 hours and then trying to tell somebody if it's haunted or there's a demon in the house or whatever they come up with on the shows after a good hour of investigating, which is, I get it. I know they do more than that, but they have to piece it together. So repeated visits, and then you start looking for correlations and things that might help explain what's going on. The other thing that we started doing, it was the topic of one of the papers, that Journal of Scientific Exploration article in 2023, was recording data in non-haunted locations to kind of see what the profiles look like. And that was for electromagnetic fields. And it gets interesting because it's like, okay, well, maybe they're not as different as we thought they were. A lot of people would assume, based on some prior studies and publications, that the electromagnetic field profiles are different in haunted locations, but they're not quite as different as we thought. There are some profiles that look similar to what you would find in a haunted location. So you do that in order to figure out what might be normal and what might not be normal. And then you start looking for how do you correlate those things to people's experiences. So when we're collecting data, we also have people note the time and what happened if they have an experience, so we can go back and correlate that to the data at the location.
Nice. Cool. Thanks for walking through that. And we got a little hello from Mike. Mike is part of Ghosted Magazine, one of our sponsors. So, hey, Mike. Hey, hey. All right. All right. Brandon, next question's for you. So, part of your presentation and the work that you described, so the idea of unfinished business is so deeply entrenched in paranormal pop culture. So, like TV shows, movies, ghost tours. That's like almost like the core of a ghost, or most
Yeah.
ghost tours, actually.
Almost every one.
Why do you think this concept has persisted for so long?
I think it's just gained attention in the media. I
Mhm.
honestly do. I mean, most ghost stories that we read, fiction, are based on that premise. I think most movies have that premise. TV
Mhm.
shows have that premise. Popular paracelebrities and ghost hunting shows utilize that premise. Uh, I think there's kind of uh, sometimes a religious backing to it as well. So all those things really come together, and it's sort of almost become fact to a lot of people where they don't even question that's why a ghost
Mhm.
is hanging out at my place. It's because they have an attachment or unfinished business, or they're trying to communicate something before they move on. It's really ingrained in the paranormal community, and
Mhm.
anytime something is ingrained, I do feel like it's something to address or readdress, just to make sure that people look at other perspectives on it. Um, I can't tell you, I've watched a lot of ghost hunting shows, and it seems to be uh, probably 100% of the time there's some sort of attachment, or 90% of the time, I shouldn't say 100. And that just permeates, it really does. And you know I always feel like a ghost, like if I'm a ghost, theoretically speaking, and you know I have the ability to travel wherever I want to, I'm going to pop back into the place where I lived and grew up, right? I'm going to pop in there every once in a while. I'm just going to see how things are going. I mean, I have the ability to travel all over the world. Why not pop into my house on Christmas every couple of years or so, just to see what's going on there? And then somebody sees me, theoretically, I guess, and now there's this whole narrative around me as a ghost when I'm just popping in because I have the ability to do that. I'm not chained to the house. I'm not chained to the location. I'm not in misery. I'm not um, trying to relive. I didn't have an improper burial. I just kind of came back to see how things were going. Sometimes I'll drive by old houses that I lived in years ago, just to kind of see. Well, if I'm a ghost, why wouldn't I do the same thing? Um, so I think that that's another plausible, like, why is why does it have to be some crisis or trauma associated with the haunting?
Mhm.
um, and I think the presentation is going to go over a different perspective on that, but just because I go over it doesn't mean it's a perspective that I sort of hold to. I'm still, we're still out there trying to figure out if there is some ghostly experiences are real, right? I mean, that's all we're trying. Most of us who are in this field um, are on that, like, I want to find out, I want to know more. So when I give a presentation on this, it doesn't mean it's my belief. I think it's a good way to just point out other perspectives and then talk about a fascinating portion of history where somebody came up with this theory that um, doesn't get recognition as some of the ones that are more popular in the media.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
I,
Yeah.
I always I hate the idea of you know improper burial is a reason for someone to haunt something. I always found
Mhm.
that to be really just a weird. We don't control how we die or when we die.
It's
I could
true.
have a great life and then you know die tragically somewhere. Why am I chained to the earth because of where I had no control over that? I don't know why I'm punished for that, or what deity or religion would punish me because I wasn't
Mhm.
proper. I always found that kind of odd. There's a lot of saints who were eaten by lions, or a lot of martyrs that were eaten by lions who are these religious icons. They weren't buried properly. So I think that's just a fascinating how it's been morphed in society today, in pop culture.
Nice. Yeah, or it's those Reese cups, that's keeping keeping you tormented,
What's fascinating is there's just tie between psychology and ghosts, right? So whether we're a ghost psychologist helping somebody, with their attachment and helping them move on, or if their attachment's keeping them here, we gotta, psychoanalyze them to help them move on. It's this idea of so much psychological dynamics associated with hauntings, from the living point of view, right? The mediums, the psychics, the people in the house. It's sort of this cat and mouse psychological game sometimes that we play when there's these reports of apparitions in the area. I find that fascinating, really, because anyone who's done as a clinical therapist, you can't do therapy in 40 minutes. You can't do therapy with 2 or 3 sentences. If someone has trauma, you're not going to move them on or anything in 4 to 5 sentences. Oh, this is trauma. That's not how therapy works. It's like, it's going to be years. You can't just tell somebody, hey, stop being depressed, and they're just going to be depressed and move on. That's not how it freaking works. It takes years and years to do this type of stuff. So the idea that you could do that immediately with somebody is quite a feat.
That's another paper right there, Brandon. Like, I was just thinking, I'm like, geez, go to the light, get over it.
Well, it's the crossing over thing. And then, the ghost whisperer was notorious for this. You have somebody come in, you figure out, what's keeping them attached, and you become sort of the ghost psychologist and you help them move on. And that has sort of taken over. And, being a psychologist for people who are in front of you, the living, is hard enough. You can't do that with a ghost. Flesh insurance won't cover that. It's lapsed if they're dead.
Oh my gosh.
That's right.
Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna,
they won't cover it. I guarantee it.
Oh my gosh. Oh man. All right. All right, Dave, next question is for you. So it's actually going back to your presentation. So you referenced the work of Charles Tart and how the field has evolved since the 1960s. In your opinion, what has been the most significant technological shift in how we collect data during investigations?
I think it has come down to miniaturization and affordability. So the smaller things have gotten and the more affordable has really revolutionized the way you can data collect or you can have any equipment at all. Because you're looking at, in the 1960s, you look at where equipment was at there. I mean, simple video cameras, come on. You're hauling in half of a TV station or a movie set to record video. And it was big, it was expensive. So as it's gotten smaller and more affordable, that's really driven people to use more and more equipment. Of course, you can argue the TV shows and all that stuff has driven the use of equipment, but really just making it affordable and making it smaller so you can get it around. Before that, even in the 80s, there just wasn't a lot of people taking equipment to locations. These days, or back in the day, let's say in the 80s, you want to do infrared photography. It was pretty complicated. You had to get the infrared film, keep it cold, load it into the camera in the dark. You had to make sure you were doing the exposures right. You had to make sure that where you used to load it with the door on the back, you had to tape around it so no light would get in. Then you'd have to take it out, put it back in the dark, put it in a canister, keep it cold, ship it in, have it developed, and there's only special places that could do that. So it was just really difficult. And thermal imaging you didn't even have a chance. You're talking, you'd have military grade, hundreds of thousands of dollars way back in the day. But now, get a $200 plug-in for your smartphone and there you go, you're doing thermal imaging. So I think that makes it a lot easier. Then you talked a little bit about AI. We mentioned that. I think right before we were coming on, but you're looking at AI. One of the things that's useful is for people who don't really understand how to do a basic statistical analysis. You can really just plug it into AI, drop your data, and just say, perform an analysis that tells me, is this different? And it'll do that. And for the most part, basic statistical analysis, it'll do it and it'll be correct. More advanced things, you got to know how to prompt it. But I think that's one thing where technology has helped quite a bit. And even if you take the next step and you know what tests to run, you can just go into Excel and highlight your data and go into the data analysis tool pack. It does it for you. So you really need to have just a basic understanding of what tests to run and what they mean, and then what significant values are. So I think there's been a lot of advances, just technology overall, and how to do analysis, as well as getting your hands on the equipment to be able to do it in an affordable way.
Yeah. And I agree. I mean, I think AI is going to revolutionize certain areas of this field. I am concerned about the apps that are claiming to use AI to pick up ghosts, because I'm like, because the person in me is like, okay, well, what did the pre-training look like? What LLM are you using? And it's like, well, how did you train this to pick up a ghost when we can't define what a ghost is? So it's like the pre-training is like based on human interaction or human data, but it's like we don't know if ghosts are even human. So that's a whole Dave, I feel like you and I can chat down the rabbit hole quite a bit. It's okay. Your dog had needed to chime in too. All good.
Somebody dared ring the doorbell.
How dare they? How dare they? Nice. All right. Let's see. Brandon, I got another question for you. So, going into the ghost studies, you explore the psychological environment and environmental triggers. Have you found patterns that frequently show up in ghost encounters between those triggers?
Can you say that? Explain that a little
Yes.
bit more.
Yeah. So you've talked about psychological and environmental triggers that um, could happen with ghost encounters. Have you found any patterns that frequently show up?
Specifically with ghostly encounters, like at haunted locations.
Yeah, let's do that.
Uh, I think we talked about this a little bit earlier. The haunting catalyst, or
Hmm.
catalyst to a haunting. I think there are triggers to it. I think when I wrote the ghost studies years ago, one of the things that I really based it on was this idea of crisis apparitions, which, for those who don't know, crisis apparitions are a little different than a haunting. So a crisis apparition is if I'm laying in bed at night and at 1 a.m. I see my aunt floating above me saying goodbye, I love you. And then I find out the next day that she died at 1 a.m. Right. So this is when a crisis happens, some sort of apparition occurs, sort of telling, it's like a distress signal if you want to think about it like that. And I think crisis apparitions are a pretty good. It's a really a fascinating area of parapsychology and apparitions in general that aren't talked about a lot. Because if I've never had a ghostly experience in my entire life, and I have one the moment my aunt dies, and it's verifiable, and we could sort of prove that, I think that's a great piece of evidence and data. And I think that with crisis apparitions, there seems to be a little bit of a formula, which I talk about in the ghost studies, that it's usually triggered. So distress triggers this telepathic message from my aunt to me. And at that moment, the telepathic message or distress signal is sort of presents itself in an apparition. And so you have the psychological components of um, my aunt going through death, which, if you're going through death, it's going to cause quite an upheaval emotionally for you, right? So that crisis event sort of triggers all these sort of mechanisms inside us that can sometimes leak out into the world. And if it leaks out into the world, it can travel long distances, sort of like entanglement and telepathy, which I talk about in there. And then it just connects with somebody. Usually it connects with somebody who you're close with, moms and daughters, um, twins, things like that, where telepathy is more common. There's some sort of resonance or connection between the two, and then you have this projection, this telepathic distress signal or crisis apparition. And I think for me, those crisis apparitions, I talk about that formula in the book. And then there's this idea that, let's say I have a crisis apparition of my aunt at my house, and then 25 years later, I move out of my house and I sell it to some family, and they're sitting in the bedroom, and they look up one day and my aunt is floating above them saying, "I love you." Is that the ghost of my aunt, or is that this sort of psychic imprint that's kind of stained in the environment that they're picking up on? So it's not so much a ghost, but they're just picking up on a previous telepathic message, more or less. So I think those are different perspectives, and you can tell if no one's heard or read any of my stuff that I like to look at different perspectives on things. So hauntings don't necessarily mean there's a deceased, discarded entity hanging around at your house. Could be numerous other sort of parapsychological reasons that are going on there. And I think sometimes that can take a little bit of the fear and sort of negative aspect to some of these ghostly phenomenon that are going on. And they're sometimes more fascinating because there's a psychological twist to it as well. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah.
Okay.
You did. You did. Good.
Yeah.
It's good. I don't know if I ever told you this story, but the night of my car accident, my aunt had a dream, like she was hanging out with my grandma. And then my grandma said to her, my grandma had passed about 5 years before that. And during the dream, my grandma said, "I have to go. Alex is in trouble." And it was the same night of my car accident.
Ooh,
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's a great story because you know what? That apparitions don't necessarily have to be of people who are deceased. They happen to the people who are living, right? So, and those telepathic interactions that you have, that's a fascinating story.
Yeah. And my aunt called my mom, and my aunt was on the East Coast too. So when my accident happened, it probably would have been 2 a.m. her time.
Okay.
And she called my mom and said, "What's going on?" And my mom's like, "Alex was just in an accident." And yeah, so I was like, whoa. I was like, weird.
Did you have a connection with your aunt? Were you close with her?
Oh yeah. So out of my grandmother's siblings, she was the one I was closest to.
Okay.
And whenever I went out to Kentucky after my great grandmother died, I stayed with my aunt. So it was my great aunt. It's my grandmother's sister. So yeah, so definitely was very close with her.
I think that's fascinating. Like when we're in these moments of distress, some signal is sent out, right? And it just bounces all over the world and it just ends up with your aunt, right? Sort of that resonance or entanglement. I think that's a fascinating stuff. I've read numerous stories about things like that. And to me, those are completely just keeps you up at night thinking all the things that have to happen, all the complex things that have to happen for that moment, that second.
Yeah.
Right.
And was it my grandmother telling her like Alex is in trouble, or were my aunt and I, were we like psychically connected in some way? So when my accident happened, it kind of boosted out a signal. I don't know.
That's the fascinating part. We don't know, but I do think that is a great example of telepathic distress signal. I mean, that's sort of the definition of it. That's great. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if I ever told you that story. Like,
I don't think you have. No, I never heard that before.
It's been one of those, like, I kept meaning to, especially after I read the ghost studies. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to tell Brandon this story. It's like 20 years ago.
Sometimes when like around October, we all know we get busy with calls about people wanting us to talk about ghosts, because I wrote a book about the ghosts here in the city I live in, and I'll do the whole story. I'll do all that. And then sometimes I'll bring up crisis apparitions. And then after a presentation, I will get 5, 6, 7, 8 people coming up talking about stories very similar to yours. And the occurrence of these things, from my experience, seems to be very high. And I don't know if Dave would know, is there actually research on the propensity of crisis apparitions out there? I don't even know. Like how
there is.
Is there?
Yeah.
what is it?
I don't know how high it is. It depends. Some of it gets blended with, is it crisis and the relationship to the person, or some people, is it, you have to look how they're described. I've seen stuff overlap where it says it's bereavement, then people say crisis, but then you have to determine. There was somebody who tried to have a category of like it's 0 to 12 hours, 12 to 24,
under 24 hours,
and then more than that is
would classify it
post-mortem,
as,
whatever. Yeah. So, but I want to say it was like 40%, which I think that's, if I'm right, you're relying on my memory, which is getting worse every year. That's still pretty high if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, Phantasms of the Living, which I don't know if anyone read the book, but that was That was what was her name? Alex, you should know this. She's
Catherine Crowe.
No, Phantasms of the Living was.
Was that not Eleanor Sidgwick? Yeah, it was Eleanor Sidgwick. Yes.
Yep.
Is that right? No.
Was it Sidgwick?
Oh crap! I don't remember.
Oh my gosh, it is on the tip of my tongue. It's not like I wrote a book about this.
It's Frederick Myers, and then she was the president of the SPR. I can't.
Yeah, Phantasms. I wanted to say that was Edmund Gurney. Phantasms of the Living, Edmund Gurney.
Yeah,
but then there was
Podmore.
Yeah, but then there was also Phantasms of the Dead, I think, because I think that was like that was Myers. That was Myers, though. Yeah, but Eleanor Sidgwick did oversee that.
Yeah. So, but this is a collection of over 600 of these crisis apparitions, and back then they would follow up. They would write letters. They would go talk to the families. They would say, "Did this actually happen?" And they used to call them vertical hallucinations back then, which kind of sounds crappy, but basically having an event happen at the same time as something else, the vertical hallucination. But so there's a whole book on these, and there's people who modern day still research it, but I don't think it's researched enough. Maybe nowadays it's a little bit harder to kind of track stuff down because cell phones and text messages, we can know what's going on with somebody right away. So
like that. Yeah. Real time. All right. One more question for the both of you, because we are coming up to our time concluding. What are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about applying science to the paranormal?
Go ahead, Dave.
Just using equipment does not equate to doing science. I think some people feel like if I have an EMF meter or I have a meter with blinky lights on it, you're doing science. That's not doing science. There's a lot more to it. So that's the biggest hang up I have about it. The other one would be that science doesn't have all the answers. So how can science tell us anything about ghosts or hauntings? It's like, okay, you totally are not understanding science, because it's a way, it's an approach, it's a method, it's a way to collect data, it's a way to analyze data, interpret, and come to a reasonable conclusion. So I think those are the two I'd go with.
Nice.
I mean, obviously, I would agree with that. I also think that, I think there's sometimes a rift between paranormal investigators and parapsychologists, or people who sort of do this academically for a living. And I'm not sure why that rift's there. I've encountered it a little bit, but I think that there's a wealth of information from the Society for Psychical Research that goes back hundreds of years, and I think that sometimes reading a journal or an article can sometimes be an overwhelming experience for people, and going over all the statistics, the conclusions, the literature reviews, and I think that from my perspective, incorporating some of that into the paranormal investigations is super helpful. And AI can do a good thing, and you can download a research article and just say, hey, can you summarize this and tell me the main points of it? And then you can take some of the stuff that's out there and peer reviewed and utilize it on a day-to-day basis. Dave said this a couple of times throughout here, an Excel sheet. If you go to 100 locations a year or 50 locations a year, you might as well throw some of that data in an Excel sheet. Rather than spend 8 hours listening to an audio, throw the data in there, throw the EMF levels in there, throw descriptive stuff in there, and then just keep throwing stuff in this Excel sheet. And then next thing you know, you have 400 data points that you can sort of do statistical analysis on, and AI can help you with that. Or you could reach out to somebody, and it's not that hard to do. It's actually really easy. You just have to get a Excel sheet, put it in there, get a formula, learn the equipment,
get some prompts going, maybe make a persona.
Yeah, it's super easy to do. And then when someone asks for data, you go, oh, here's 300 data points, and it shows here that blank blank blank, and this room, and this is the temperature here, and then when I went to this, and this is a non-haunted location. I think that's really the misconception is that it's difficult to do, and I don't really think it is. Nowadays, AI can summarize your research papers so you can get an idea. Excel is really easy to do. You can run a statistical analysis. It's not hard to do. So I always encourage people to use Google Scholar, look up articles. The ghost hunting shows are really great. I think they give you some information, but you can take it a step further if you're really super interested in it. Just do that.
Nice. Good stuff. All right. We have reached the end of our time. So before I let you two go for the evening, I mean, this was a fascinating discussion. Thank you both so much for sharing your insights, your research, and your passion for this work. Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you so much. Now, before I let you go, though, where can people find you if they want to reach out and chat with you?
These days, Facebook. That's a main way. They can always reach me, email, full name, David Schumacher 5@gmail.com. Otherwise, they can stop in and say hi to myself and my co-host Kenny and Tim on Three Tortured Souls, which is the first Wednesday of every month.
Nice.
I have a website, hauntedtheories.com. Facebook is Haunted Theories, or you can find me on just my name, Brandon Massullo, as well. That's pretty much it. If you need to get a hold of me, you can do it through the website or Facebook. It's really easy to do. So that's it.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to let you two go for the evening if you don't mind hanging out in the studio, though. Yeah, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
All right. So this brings us to the end of another awesome episode of the Symposium Weekly Speaker Series. A huge thank you to Brandon Massullo and Dave Schumacher for such an enlightening conversation tonight. You both brought so much depth, and I know that our audience enjoyed it, and I'm so looking forward to your presentations. Now, if you want to hear more from Dave and Brandon and meet them in person, be sure to grab your tickets to the Paranormal Research Symposium happening on Saturday, August 23rd in Gettysburg. You can go to associationofparanormalstudy.com to grab your tickets. And also, if you would like to go see the symposium or go to the symposium for free, we are looking for volunteers. So we need session attendants and someone to help with the check-in table. If you're a session attendant, you can be right in the room with Brandon and Dave. We still have a room block available, so if you need a place to sleep, which I'm sure you will, that is available. And thank you again to our amazing sponsors, Ghostly Images of Gettysburg, Ghosted Magazine, Gold Dust Publishing, and Lauren Hauntz. So we'll be back next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern with more guests, so make sure to follow us, mark your calendars, and spread the word. And until then, stay curious, stay grounded, and of course, stay